This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
If your fashion wish list lives rent-free in your brain, you need to be on Poshmark. With Poshmark, you're shopping millions of listings from thousands of closets, each curated by someone with their own style. Vintage finds, designer pieces, and everyday staples all in one place. Search for your favorites or let the discovery come to you. Poshmark makes it easy to find what you actually want to wear at prices that feel like a quiet win. Download the Poshmark app today and use code PODCAST10 when you sign up to get $10 off your first purchase.
I like ulterior motives.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for making me feel smart.
Do you ever have this pulled on you though? Because I've had people try to do this to me, and I was like, you just like, you feel the BS coming out of their lips when they're talking.
Yeah, all the time. Sometimes I get that feeling from myself.
You're so smart.
Yeah, as I look at myself in the mirror and say, "Oh, I'm so smart. I'm so great." No, I'm just kidding. Everybody likes to feel smart. No one wants to feel dumb. And this law really hones in on that arrogance and the need that some people have to impress other people. I think that the power is not about arrogance. It's not about impressing others. It's more than skin deep. It's more than what people see. I think of us as being icebergs. There's some, you can see just so much up on the surface, but there's so much more down below. God,
which could be baggage, right? Or skeletons in your closet.
It could be baggage. Definitely. That's how I'm going to take it.
Not where your mind was going.
But it actually reminds me of this guy that I knew in graduate school. He was Turkish, and he wanted to learn the various American slang. And at the end of the year, after my buddy and I taught him all this American slang, he said, "I just want to thank you guys for teaching me how to speak like an American." And he went through each of the various things, various terms that we taught him. But what was so funny is he said, "I have learned to be cool, but not frozen." I don't know. It seemed to connect to that.
Well, the mean thing is, remember Tom, my Chinese friend, when I was a kid? Oh, yeah. And, Tom had come over here when he was 13 or 14 into America. So, he had a real hard time picking up English, but he taught me some Chinese, of course, curse words. But that was the wrong thing to do, because whenever we went to like the mall to hang out, if I saw other Chinese people, I would start screaming these curse words, and they would automatically start looking at him and give him dirty looks. And he'd be like, "Oh, well, why are they looking at you?" He would get so mad.
It's like Cheech and Chong, where
I know exactly what you're going to say.
They were saying pendejo, yeah. Which means I think it means asshole.
I just saw that.
And sorry to cuss, but it's not a good word that it means. And so he tells them, it means good friend. So he starts calling everybody that.
Well, it's when they remember they accidentally crashed their van onto someone's yard, and the Spanish family comes out, and he starts calling them all pendejos. He's like, hey, pendejo, how are you? And they all start yelling, and he thinks they're all getting excited, but they're all yelling and cursing at him.
Yeah, my good friend. Anyhow, it's, once again, I'll get us back on track here. So, once again, the laws of power not only teach us how to learn how to play the game, but it also helps us learn how to avoid being played. And having someone else make you feel smart, it might feel good, but we all need to be aware of that when somebody's, blowing smoke out your, up your butt. Is that a
yeah
thing? And the BS alert should go off when, the people, when you start to think, is that guy really that dumb? They could be a wolf, in sheep's clothing. They could be trying to pull the wool over your eyes.
Well, I heard that saying that you blow smoke up your butt actually came from a medical treatment that they used to do, like back in the 1700s or something, where they used to like pump smoke up there because they thought it cured certain ailments.
I wish some of our listeners would actually do some fact finding on the things that we talk about, because I think you're trying to pull the wool over our eyes.
I heard that. I promise you, man. It's like the whole thing with leeches. They used to think leeches were a medical treatment, right? And that was here in the United States back in the 1700s. You used to go to a barber shop and they would put leeches on you as part of the deal. Because the barbers back then were also considered medical doctors, or at least close to it.
That just conjures up all sorts of just terrible visions of how that treatment would give, how that treatment would go about. I still don't buy that. But
in fact, I went to an old barbershop yesterday. I've been going to one of those standard big brand places that promise they're going to cut your hair. Not for me, for my son Hunter.
Okay.
And I was like, every time I go, they always treat me rudely, and it's like I'm doing them a favor to be in there, or like they're doing me a favor. I'm sorry. And so I was like, what? There's this little barbershop like 2 blocks away from me. I'm just going to stop there and go there. And the guy gave the best haircut. I mean, it took him a long time, but he provided great service. And it was just cool to see, something. I felt like I was contributing to the small guy instead of the big brands.
I think that's great, but I really thought you were trying to pull the wool over our eyes, because I was like, the last time I went to the barber shop, hey, come on, Tom. Hey,
well, the thing is, the guy saw me walk in first. I think and it was like right around closing time. I think he was like starting to reach for his gun, thinking, okay, this guy's not coming in for a haircut. He's coming in to hold up the joint, But then he saw my son pop out behind me, and he was like, oh.
I think I'm really going to get into some useful tips here, because we're going way off. I guess the tip that I can think of is that it's important to read the fine print, not only in contracts and in agreements, but also in situations. And the reason why I say that is because there could be more to it than meets the eye. If you don't keep your eyes open and pay close attention to what's being said, say, for instance, going to Tom's story about going to the barber, he has no need to go to the barber. Now, if you're just listening to this and you've never seen a picture of Tom, you might not, it might not dawn on you to say, hey, you know what? I think he's trying to pull the wool over my eyes, because that dude don't need a barber. But it's that situational awareness to say, if it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true.
To be honest with you, I haven't paid a barber other than for my kids in years. I mean, years and years, because before I went bald, I had very long hair, so I never went to the barber. I just didn't have to cut my hair.
Yeah,
right. And when I did, I went to one of those places.
Read the fine print and understand that there might be more to.
You're cutting out on me. What I was trying to get across is the last time I was at a barber for myself, they wanted me to be a hair model. They give you an idea. So
you did have beautiful hair, man.
Yeah, that was over 20 years ago.
Flowing locks. So going back to reading that fine print, there are, whenever we come to an agreement or sign a contract, we have some vision in mind of what's going to happen because of this. But what you really need to look at that fine print, because sometimes there are going to be conditions that you didn't think of and that you weren't aware of. And if you just go in there and just take it at their word, they could be playing you for a sucker. To say, oh, well, what we tell you is, you're going to get this interest rate, but the first time that you're not 5 days early, to the bill date, your interest rate's going to go up to 30%. Or, I'm just throwing those numbers out, but there could be stipulations in that contract that you're not aware of that you could be really hurt by if you don't pay attention. I've learned over the years to read the fine print. Even going into the grocery store, picking a gallon of milk out of the refrigerator, I look at the date on that, because there's nothing worse than going home and like you got the milk, and a day later you notice, oh damn, we're past the expiration date. So just keep your eyes open.
Do you want to touch on the story that was in, or one of the stories that was in the chapter, talked about Arnold Arnold and Slack. What kind of name is that, man? Well, you wouldn't want to do business with someone named Slack anyways. No offense. But Arnold and Slack back in the 1800s, back during the prospecting days, they swindled these basically these millionaires from England and from New York by claiming that they had uncovered in Wyoming a diamond mine, which, everyone knew there was gold mines in America, but diamonds, that's just not something that we would usually find here. So what they did is for like $10,000, they had made some money previously in gold mines. They took their money and invested it, bought some diamonds and some rubies, and they scattered and salted the mines. So they told these people in England, say, hey, we've discovered this mine, and we'll take you here and we'll show you what we found. So they hid the location of the mine so that no one would know. So they would, go roundabout ways in order to get there. And they finally took the guy there, and he checked it out. And sure enough, there was gems there. And they were like, they verified it. They said, well, let's bring in one more expert from America. And so they laid down on deposit. And what those guys did is they took that deposit and went over to Amsterdam and bought even more gems, right? So they invested all this money that these guys gave them. And the next expert they brought in was like, hey, they're telling the truth. There's like gems all over. I'm finding rubies. They're all, not they were like uncut. And so eventually they brought all these investors in, and they were like, look, we got to get this mine away from these idiots, because they don't realize what they have. They're sitting on more than a gold mine. It's a diamond and ruby and all kinds of gems are popping out of this thing. We got to have this. Let's pay them $700,000, which was back then was huge, and let them take it, and we'll keep all the dividends for ourselves, right? Because it was, in their eyes, it was worth a lot more. Well, these guys purposely, when they went to New York and met with all the investors, acted like idiots. They bought clothes that were too tight, and they acted excited about seeing everything. So everyone thought they were a rube, and they were like, forget about these guys, man. We're going to pay them the money and we'll own the mine. So they paid them the $700,000, got to the mine and realized it was a big hoax.
Yeah, and everything was legal.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go into hiding because it said in the contract right there. There was no guarantee of future, of any type of future outcome. So it was all strictly legitimate. In fact, that involved one of the Rothschilds, which, if you know anything about banking, that's one of the most moneyed families in basically, I guess, all of mankind. I don't think that's an exaggeration to say that. You talk about old money. The Rothschilds are the definition.
It's like the Vanderbilts.
Yeah, and they own banking systems, and that was one of the first times where Rothschild got fooled, and I think it was one of the last.
Yeah, not only did they lose all the money of that, the $700,000 that they gave to those guys, they invested in buying heavy machinery and getting all the right talent in order to go in and start mining this thing, which was just a place of dirt, really.
Yeah, and what they said also is that these guys, even though they salted the mines, they really didn't make a big story out of it. They didn't really mislead. I mean, they were misleading, I guess, in some regard, or in certain terms, they were misleading, but it took on the story took on a life of itself, and the people that they brought in, the experts that they brought in to judge the value of these gems, overestimated the value. So I think they said they spent like $10,000 on the gems, and the estimate came up like $1 million or something like that. I mean, just gross. The experts were wrong, and experts aren't always right,
because they got caught up in
this day and age.
They got caught up in the hype.
It's interesting. Expertise and authority, especially in these days, it should be more than just an appearance. But oftentimes, I mean, if you go out on the interweb, you can find out how to be an expert on just about any field. There are steps that you take to define yourself as authority.
Yeah, you start expertise. A podcast. But starting a podcast is supposedly the newest thing to build authority, right? So we have a bunch of idiots out there that are starting podcasts and coming across as experts, like us.
Yeah, and this our podcast, Swift Kick in the Ass. Let's just start kicking some ass right here and just say that all those people out there are not experts, they're not authority, and just keep your eyes open. We're not saying that we are either.
No, this is our journey.
I think that's there. Yeah,
but there are a lot of people out there that just think because they do a podcast and a blog that they're expert in their fields, and that doesn't make you an expert in your field.
Yeah, and having a blog or a podcast about making $1 million when you're eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or going dumpster diving, that does not equate. A lot of these
it's
people
like selling those
getting rich.
It's like selling those books on how to make money online, on how to make money online. When the person has never really made any money, but other than selling products to teach people that.
So, just recognize that that is probably one of the most easiest ways that people get fooled nowadays. You should question everything. Even question the facts that we bring up on this show, like Tommy's
blowing smoke up your butt.
Yeah, as a medical treatment. I'd like to know if that's
why not, man. People flush water up there, and so you can lose weight, right? And so you can clean yourself out. I've seen these pamphlets that they send to my mom, right? I had this one. I brought it to work once because it was so funny. They're like, "Did you know that you have 15 pounds of undigested poop within your body?" It's like they're scaring you, and you see a picture of like this dried, petrified crap, and you're like, "My God, I got to get that out of my system. It's disgusting." So people automatically want to start taking all these cleanses, and it's insane.
Yeah, and I mean that plays on people's fears, which is very commonplace in many aspects of our life. And most people just base their decision to act solely on that one source of information, and you could be being played.
Look, I live in South Florida, and we had just faced what was supposed to be a hurricane coming our way, but they make the hype. The news gets so hypey before that I went into Home Depot the other day, and it was like mass hysteria of old ladies looking around trying to buy batteries. All they had was batteries and water. Like that's all you need for a hurricane is batteries and water. And people were like fighting to find the D-size batteries because they were out of them. They were sold out. All they had was C's and double A's. And all these old ladies are like gathering around. And if they saw like 2 or 3 of them huddled around, a bunch of more would go up like, oh, there must be some there. It's insane. And of course the storm broke up, and we had some thunderstorms. That was about it.
Yeah, isn't that the case? I mean, most of the time.
Yeah, about 90% of the time.
I was born and raised in South Florida, and I never went through a hurricane in all the time I lived in Florida. But since I've lived in Virginia the last 10 years, I've gone through two hurricanes and an earthquake.
Should have stayed in Miami.
And they say, Florida is a much more dangerous place to live. Well, not in my book. especially when these big trees get uprooted. But go deeper, keep yourself grounded, lose your arrogance thinking that you know everything. I know I'm dealing with that with my 13-year-old right now, and I've been telling my children this all their life to prepare them to say, you're going to reach a point in your life where you think dear old dad he doesn't know what he's talking about, and that you know everything. And I actually had to tell my 13-year-old today that she had reached that age.
Yes. My son is 12 and he has reached that age as well.
So, there's no one knows everything. And what I've learned is that the more I learn, the more I recognize how little I know. So, it feels good to think of yourself as being a smart person, and certainly other people can go to a state fair or a county fair. You're going to feel great about yourself when you look at all these other people.
It can happen even in professions. I mean, you can see a doctor that's really, is really an expert in his field and very well developed and focused. But in other areas of his life, he might not be so focused. It might be, a disaster in other areas, whether it's financial or, taking care of himself or his family or what have you. So because it's hard to be good at everything. So, a lot of people will focus on one path.
Yeah. And also, you make an excellent point there. Your approach to life is based on your experience. And when you're a professional like a doctor, it's based on your training. So a surgeon is going to recommend surgery. That's what they've been trained to do. And that's not always the best case, not always the best thing to do. So know what your options are.
Yeah, because
make your own decisions.
One day there might be a podcast, 200 years from now, and they'll talk about, can you believe what these people did? They blew smoke up people's butts.
Yeah, Tommy, I'm sure they're going to say that. What's very interesting too is with Law 21, to play a sucker to catch a sucker. This is a very important law. It reiterates, or it brings together elements of almost like most of the laws that we've already discussed. I mean, if you go through the table of contents for laws of power, and law number 1, never outshine the master. What are they saying? They're saying, play dumb. Play dumb. Don't let the master think that he's smarter than you are. Law number 3, conceal your intentions. Again, play that game so you're not telling everybody your business. And the list could go all,
every time we talk about the laws of power, I always think of Star Wars. I always think of Emperor Palpatine when he was a senator and when he was just hiding and playing like, a kindly old man and, turning people against each other. But he was, basically pulling the strings on the entire universe. And it's such a good illustration of this book.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of other, popular movies or TV shows or books that play upon the laws of power.
Well, we're gonna touch on some of those.
Yeah, we are going to touch on this. Let's see. I want to get back to the actionable items because I think that we've gone a lot, gone off quite a bit, and I think that's great. But I want you to walk away from this, with a new way of looking at power and recognizing that you don't have to be played the sucker. Keep your eyes open and be smart about things, and don't just jump because someone says to jump. Read the fine print. Go deeper than just the surface. If people say something that you think is too good to be true, chances are it's going to be. So do your research and make that determination for yourself and do what's good for you. Know all the ins and outs. Systems are ways of doing things. That's all they are. It sounds complicated. It sounds a bit intimidating when you say, I have a system of doing this. That just means they have a way of doing things. We all have systems. We all have certain different ways.
When I was in the Air Force, we used to carry a book called a flight checklist, and it would basically tell us a procedure for everything that we needed to do for our job, and broken down. And this is step one, and they'll put little subjects like A, B, C, and you had to follow that in an emergency, because what happens is you get confused, and it was good to have something to refer back to. But it was basically just a system. It was a system that they could implement, and anyone could reproduce what we were doing as long as they had that book.
Yeah, and I agree. Systems do have their place, and if you work for a big company and you have paid time off, that's part of the system. There are basically rules to follow according to that system. Our government has a number of different systems of checks and balances that are supposed to keep power in place. But my point is not really to bash systems or ways of doing things, but to say that when you know what the rules are, you can know how to work them to your advantage, and you can learn how to get around them in some cases without breaking the law, without breaking the rules. If those who understand the rules best can help leverage that knowledge to your advantage.
Well, that's why it's so hard to catch a white-collar criminal sometimes, because they're so good at what they do, because they know the field that they're working in. And for the investigators, they're not experts in that field. So sometimes it's a real struggle.
Yeah. We've always heard about loopholes. And, just because something is legal, it doesn't necessarily make it right. Because they haven't, just for what Tom said, people who are expert and they know the rules in and out, they can use those rules to their advantage. It's still considered to be legal, but it might not be a good thing.
Well, the opposite goes too. Sometimes there's a rule or a law that is not necessarily a law that's true. It's not necessarily something that's wrong. It's just something that someone has deemed not to do for a specific reason.
Yes. And going back to what we've talked about with politicians doing that, there are a lot of laws like that on the books that people get emotional about, because it hits very close to their heart about how they want to live their life. And here the government is saying, no, you can't do this.
Right. So, well, we all know that there was laws about not spitting on sidewalks or not having certain, types of sex, in certain states, and things that you read them, you're like, really? There's a law about this? But somehow they got passed.
In Jacksonville, Florida, it's my understanding that there's a law that you're not allowed to shower without your clothes. There's some old time law on the books that they just never took off. And it's ridiculous if you think about it.
Yeah.
Everybody breaks that law then.
Yep.
Who showers with their clothes on? But back then, when that law was written, there was a reason for that.
It's probably showered together in a public someplace.
Yeah, it's just if you know what the rules are, you know how to get around them. Don't know who you're dealing with. Again, that was one of the other laws that we covered. And don't be an open book, because I think when you give too much information out, especially to people that you don't know, that can be used against you. And someone who is playing dumb will use that information to their advantage and leverage that against you. So just do your own thinking. I think that's really the end point. Be careful, be smart, do your own thinking, and we'll be talking to you next time.
Yep.
With Kicking Ass.
That's right. Thanks for listening. Make sure you stop by swiftkickingaass.com. We have a new action plan. It's a 10-page plan that John has put together, and it's got some really good stuff. It may change your life, so you might check it out. That's a swiftkickingaass.com for easy email swipe. And I trust you. We don't send out emails unless we really need to get a hold of you. So no worry there. We're not going to spam you. You probably won't see an email for another 10 months. All right. So check it out. Thanks.